soul challenger, I'm the road damager. Now behold the cold and the straight magical. Cause the sky brings fires and the strong grow weary. The heroes built blood and a blast and a fury. Pray on the power and pray to your father. Cause all of the quakes in the universe resonate to your heartbeat and your faith.
Hey guys, happy Monday. Tyson here. Glad you stopped by. I'm sitting here in my London studio apartment by myself today. I'm going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to change the way we do things in just a little moment. I'll explain that to you in a second, but it's been a nice Monday. It's been a good little relaxed Monday. I needed it because the weekend's been quite busy. We had an action-packed weekend. We were real tourists over here. We went and saw Division 1 football game. I've got in the habit of calling soccer football. That's how you know I've been in London for a little while now. We went and saw Fulham play Preston. Crazy day. Really good game. Friday night we went and saw The Book of Mormon, which for those of you who are into the theatre scene, highly recommend it. For those of you who are easily offended, don't go and see it ever. It is so rude and it has so much swearing, but it is the funniest show I've ever seen. So I'm going to do something a little bit different today. Usually I have a guest here, and actually for the last few weeks we've had, 15 guests now? I can't believe how fast that's gone. It's gone really, really quick, but I wanted just to talk to you about a few things for this episode. Now bear with me because it's an interesting chat that I want to have with you guys, and it's an open-ended chat. I want you guys to email me any questions, any feedback, anything at tysonpopplestone at tyson.popplestone@gmail.com. That is that. Even though I said it with no confidence at all, let's make this a conversation because I don't expect you just to sit here for half an hour and listen to my voice. But before I get into it, I want to explain what the theme or what the idea of this chat is. So as I mentioned, this is the 16th episode now, and I've chatted with so many people from so many walks of life about so many different topics. And a couple of weeks ago I was having lunch with some friends, and one of my mates was like, Tyus, it's really cool to hear how many guests and stuff you're having, and it's crazy to see how many different themes you're sort of touching and how many different ideas and concepts that these people that you're having on your show are speaking about. He said, what would be cool if you had like a Tim Ferriss Tools of Titans kind of episode where you pull out the major themes from the episodes that you've had so far and just talk about it for a little bit. So I thought two things in that moment. The first thing I thought was, man, you're such a good looking bloke. And the second thing I thought was, man, that's just a brilliant idea. So big shout out to Reed. You got Reed to thank for this episode. So I hope you all enjoy it. If not, it was Reed's fault. As I went through the last 15 episodes, I realized how many themes there are that we actually have covered in the last couple of weeks. So it's been fun for me just to be able to play a little bit of catch up and write down the major things that have stood out to me about the guests that I've spoken to. Now, there's no one size fits all. It's not like these themes are about one particular thing. But as I look through them, I think the major sort of idea that comes out is, it's really nice to see, because I guess it's the whole ethos of this podcast, is about creating a more intentional life. So when I look at it, I see things that are just going to help us create space, create clarity, create a little more purpose in the way that we use our time. So I wanted to walk through 15 things with the idea of hopefully leaving you with a little more faith, a little more confidence in what it is that you're doing with your time each day. Because if you're anything like me, you'll realize how quickly life can get busy. You know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. So I guess the idea here is I got no problem with busy, but if we can apply these tips, it's going to help us be busy about the things we actually care about, not just busy with the extra details, which I think, if we're not careful, can become such a massive theme in our day. So before we get started, at the end of this podcast, I usually let you guys know about the newsletter that I have around creating more space in your life for the things that you're really passionate about. If you guys would like to get in touch there, I'm fairly light on the email. I'll send out 1, maybe 2 emails a month if something really exciting is happening. The email is purely about creating space in your life for the things that you're really passionate about. How do you escape busy, find focus? How do you create space, find clarity? So if you'd like to get on board there, I'll send you a welcome email. It's like a digital hug to say, hey, welcome to the family. Jump onto tysonpopplestone.com/newsletter, enter your details there. We'll get the party started. So we'd love to have you guys on board. A heap of you have signed up, so thank you for listening, not only to the start of the podcast, but to the end where I actually tell you those details. But now a whole heap more of you will know about that. So feel free to jump on board there. So guys, without further ado now, let me jump into the first thing that's really stood out to me. Grab a notepad, grab a pen. For anything like me, that's going to help you a whole heap. So these are in no particular order, But these are just some of the big things that have really stood out to me in the first few weeks of hosting the podcast. So number one, put your phone away. I love how simple this tip is. I love how practical it is. I love how you can't misinterpret what it means. And I love how so many people, when they hear that, they're like, yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I need to do. It's like a breath of fresh air when they can escape their phone for just a couple of hours in the day. And I remember a few weeks ago, you might have heard the conversation I had with Anthony Ongaro from Break the Twitch, where he spoke about this impulse that we all have to jump towards our mobile phone whenever there's a spare 60 seconds in our day. It's like, I don't know about you guys, but it feels as though we've got this allergy to any temporary boredom. It's like if there's any moment of quiet or peace or just a boredom in our day, we jump, we twitch, we jump straight to the mobile phone and jump on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or like insert whatever your favorite platform is just there. And one thing that I've realized through this show is a lot of guys, a lot of girls that I've been speaking to have been saying, man, you want to create a little bit of extra time in your day? Or create boundaries with the way that you use your phone. And the cool thing with this is I think different personalities interpret that in different ways. So for example, for me, when it comes to social media, I'll allocate like a specific part of my day to that. So it might be a 30-minute block where I can look at whatever I want on social media. And through the day, I'll just write down those things. So say if between 5 and 5:30, I'll jump on social media, flick through whatever it is I want to flick through, contact whoever I want to contact. And then when that time's over, I'll just put the phone away. My social media time for that day is done. Now, the cool thing with that is, and the thing that I've found most freeing with that is, I think so often when we jump on social media or when we jump on our phone, we can all go down that rabbit hole. You know what I mean. We'll go down the rabbit hole of clicking on one thing. We start with a Donald Trump video and then we end up at cat videos and we have no idea how that transition's taken place. But it took us an hour and all of a sudden we've just lost an hour of our day where we all know we could have been using it more effectively. Another great little tool, I think, when it comes to the whole theme of using our mobile phone is when we come home, put your phone in one particular place. Anthony Ongaro and I spoke about this in detail earlier, in the earlier weeks of the show. And I think the cool thing with this is when we have our phone on us constantly, in those moments of boredom, it is so easy just to rely on it. If it's in our pocket, we can just pull it out and click on whatever it is we want to click on. But if we have a place allocated for our phone, maybe it's in the spare room, maybe it's in the kitchen, and we just leave our phone there, and that's the only place that we're allowed to use the phone when we're at home, it creates a little more purpose and a little more intentionality about the way we use it, because we have to go physically to that area. And if we're only using it while we're in that area, we have to stand there and think about what it is we're actually trying to do. And that just prevents a few of those rabbit hole moments. So the cool thing is, it doesn't mean you can't use it. It just means through the day, be a little more deliberate. If you think, oh man, I actually want to check this tonight, write it down. And then when you go to your phone or you go to your social media or your computers, you have your list and you can just work through that. Once that's done, you can put it away, you can go on with a whole heap of other things. It's amazing how much time we have when we just put our phones away for a little bit of time. The second thing that I wanted to touch on something that's been so recurring amongst every single person that I've spoken to. And if you're writing notes, this is point 2. Start small. Start small. I love the idea of starting small because it's not what any of us want to do. Mr. G Poet said it a few weeks ago. He goes, Tice, if you had a choice to earn $1 million overnight or $1 million in 10 years, what would you choose? The answer is always you want it $1 million overnight. But the reality of the situation is, if you want to become great at whatever it is that you're doing, we have to take the first step. We can't reach point 5 before we've taken point 1. I think every person I've spoken to, especially the bloggers, they've all said, we've started with 1 reader and then we gradually got to 10 and then we gradually got to 20 and then 50. And then before you know it, we're influencing thousands and thousands of people. But what we got to first do is take that first step. So I don't know what that looks like in your life. I mean, we've all got these things that we dream about doing. And for so many of us, it might be just a pipe dream. It's something that we speak about doing, but we've never had the courage to actually step out because we don't want to take that first step. We don't want to, take the risk of failing. But the fact is, all great things start with a single step. The fact that every single person that I've interviewed in the first 15 episodes have said, no, you have to start with the first step. I think a lot of us let perfection get in the way of us even starting. We think it has to be perfect before we start. But there's a great quote that I think might have come up a couple of times, and if it hasn't, here's a good one for you. It's ready, fire, aim. You know, a lot of us think that we have to have to be ready, and then we have to aim, and then we have to fire. And yeah, preparation's a great thing. Preparation's so important. It's essential that we do our best to have our product or our blog or our podcast or our book or whatever it is ready to the best of our ability. But it's never going to be perfect. And in fact, it's not until we take the first step and then the second step where we start to get feedback on where we can improve that we can actually see where it is we need to change direction, change angle, put more focus on. So I love this because it's so encouraging. We don't need to be Michael Jordan overnight. We don't need to be Michael Jordan in 5 years. We've got to continually focus on this idea of 10,000 hours towards mastery. We've got to invest in our ability one step at a time. And the first step is always small. But as you start to take those steps, over a year, you've taken 365, over 2, you've taken over 700. You've realized that you're well and truly on your way towards what it is that you're trying to achieve. The third thing that I wanted to touch on is this idea of establishing your values. Point 3 is establishing your values. Now, the thing that I love about this is, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago, is we so often get busy in our day, but the question is not are you busy, but what are you busy about? And I think when you can have some clarity on what it is that you really value, saying no to the excess in your life becomes so much easier. I mean, when you know where it is that you're headed, you know how much easier it is to, stop yourself from veering off course. So for me, I took a little while ago, I was trying to climb Mount Everest in 2015, and long story short, it failed. I know I'm going to tell you about that another time in more detail, but I remember sitting in Kathmandu, and I'd spent 18 months planning, preparing, training, trying to get organized to climb this mountain. And when it failed, I was sitting there and I was thinking, man, I've put so much time into this and I don't even really love mountain climbing. It was a real wake-up call for me. I was like, what am I doing with myself? What have I done? So it was in that moment, I was actually reading Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he says, one of the most important things you can do is create clarity on what it is that you really value. So for me, in that point forward, I realized that, okay, the most important things in my life, if I wanted to be remembered in a particular way, I'd want to be remembered by those I love for my faith and for my investment into my family and my investment into my health and my communication, my contribution to those less fortunate than me. They're the areas that I really want to commit my time and energy towards. So I think what was really cool about that, and a theme that so many of these guys kept speaking about, is when you're clear, it makes it so much easier to invest in those things. So what about you guys? What is it that you really value? If you were to depart this earth and people that you love were going to record something about you, what would you want them to say? I think that it sounds depressing, but it's a really powerful way for us to be able to establish, okay, what are the most important things in my life? What are the most essential things? What do I really want to invest in? Because it doesn't take long for us to realize that, okay, maybe it's not spending more time at the office. Maybe it's not just investing more time into trying to earn money. Maybe we think they're the most important things, but when we think about not being here and our family remembering us, what are our real values? Number 4, failure is just feedback. I think time and time again through these conversations, whether it was Mr. G Poet or the Minimalists or Kate Flanders or whoever it is that you want to pick out of this group of people that I've interviewed so far, is this idea that at some stage we all fall flat on our face. Now, I think it's funny that when we look at the superstars in their fields, we all love a success story. We all love a Rocky story. We all love it when people have had to overcome extreme odds and they've had to keep getting back up from failures and keep getting back up from failures and continually doing that in order to achieve their goals. But I think so often in our own lives, we hit a failure and we just assume that that's a sign that we shouldn't continue with the dream that we have. We'll hit a roadblock and think, okay, well, maybe this isn't for me. But I think it's so much easier for us to see on a real practical scale in the lives of others that if you want to be great at something, then failure is an essential part of that journey. I mean, Michael Jordan's a classic example where, you've probably seen his Nike ad where he speaks about all his failures. But then at the end he says, but it was only through my failures that I was able to succeed. It was only through my failures where I could see what I needed to improve, what I needed to change, what I needed to adjust. So, I think some of us, when we fall, we think, okay, that's enough. But maybe there's a few things in your life that you've fallen short in. Maybe there's a few things in your life you're disappointed or you feel as though you could have done better. And at the moment, you're looking at those things and thinking, okay, well, man, I should never have done that. But I just want to challenge you guys to to see that from a fresh perspective, to see that with a fresh lens. And when you see failure as just feedback and not the end of the road, it stops it from being the overriding factor that stops you dreaming big. And in fact, it becomes something that it's almost just wind in your sails. When failure is just feedback, then what's that feedback trying to tell you? Well, the feedback's just trying to help you improve. It's trying to help you adjust. It's trying to help you change. So I think many of us just get so caught up. But hey, failure doesn't have to be the end of the road. In fact, it could very well just be the start. All right, you guys doing okay? We're getting through it. This is point number 5. I'm pretty sure it's point number 5. You're probably sick of me talking about this particular one, but in case you're not, write this down. Number 5, meditate. Now, this is something that I've been speaking about heaps over the last couple of months, and I want to be careful when I speak about it because I feel like at the moment there's a real trend with 30-year-old blokes getting on their high horse because they've just started learning about mindfulness and meditation and how much of an impact it's had on their life. I know it's become a huge thing in the West, but just let me get on my preach for a minute because this is something that has really influenced my life. And I'm not saying this from a point of that I think I'm an expert. I'm saying this from a point that, hey, this is really, really helpful. Now, there's so many better people than me to explain what the benefits of it are, but let me just explain what I've experienced in the last 2 years of practicing meditation. So you guys have heard me speak about the fact that originally I was a really anxious sort of dude. My mind always seems to race. And I know I'm not alone in this. I speak to so many people who are constantly anxious. And I think for myself and so many of the people that I've spoken to, anxiety is an attachment with your thoughts. You think in a particular way and all of a sudden you start to assume that the thoughts that you're having are right, that the thoughts that you're having are accurate and that they're fact. The cool thing about meditation is it provides you with a perspective of your thoughts that's far different to what you've ever experienced. So for me and a lot of the people that I've talked with, we start with a 20-minute meditation first thing in our morning. Now, if it's new to you, try the Headspace app, try the Calm app. But the purpose is to purely to sit down quietly and observe your thoughts. Now, the cool thing about observing your thoughts is it just gives you the capacity to separate from them. Just imagine them on a movie screen and you can just watch them going past. Imagine they're like clouds in a sky. You can see one thought pass, disappear, it might come back, pass, another thought comes through. Now, what a lot of us do, we try and attach that cloud, we try and grab that cloud, we try and give meaning to it and understand it, but the fact is thoughts so often are just arbitrary. They just race in, they race out, they flow, they go. When we can see that we don't need to attach it or necessarily control it, but just see that they just float through like a cloud, we don't have to attach ourselves so tightly to it. Number 6, rest. This is so tough for us to hear in Australia, in America, anywhere in the West, because we're all obsessed with this idea of progression. We love the idea of getting up early, staying up late, working on weekends, not taking holidays. And to an extent, yeah, our passion for our work can be exciting, but it can also be bloody exhausting, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have known. And one thing that I loved through speaking with Courtney Carver just a few weeks ago, she was speaking about her multiple sclerosis and, the challenge that she was having to reduce stress in her life. And one of the things that she really values is just taking some time out to rest. And I thought this is really powerful because I think one group of people who understand this better than anyone else is athletes. They understand that if they want their work that they put in day after day after day to be absorbed by their body to its full potential, then they need a rest. They need to give their muscles the capacity to be able to absorb that work. And I think it's completely accurate. I think it's completely true when it comes to our work life as well. When it comes to whatever it is that we're doing, yeah, hard work is good, but you got to give that work a chance to settle. You got to give your mind and body a chance to recover. And there's a few different ways that we can do this. I think one really practical way is to create a rest day that you have each and every week. So for me, it's Sunday. As soon as Sunday comes around, my laptop is closed. I don't write. I don't podcast. I try my best to stay off my phone and try and avoid any screen time and just give my mind that capacity to recover. Now, even though it can be hard on Sunday because you feel as though you're not working as hard as what you should be, by the time Monday comes around, you're a little bit more fired up. You got some fuel in your fire. You're ready to go for another week. Another way that you can do this is through like an annual retreat. So whether that's 2 or 3 weeks each year. Now it's going to vary depending on where you work and what your boss and what your work expectations are. But I think creating a space each year where you can get away from your work, you can get away from the routine, you can get away from the commitments that you surround yourself with time and time again can completely refresh your mind. I mean, so many of us go through life seeing the world from one particular perspective, and it's usually formed by so many of the people around us. I mean, we spend so much time with the same people at our work that we start to see things the same, or we start to get stuck in a little bit of a routine bubble. We start to get stuck in this real rigid sort of mindset. I think taking some time away, especially in nature, can really help connect us with the things that are really important. We start to see that, okay, maybe I didn't need to put as much, focus and as much value on what I've been putting it in the last few months. And we can come back with a whole sense of freshness, a whole sense of purpose, and a whole sense of clarity on what is really valuable in our lives. Okay, number 7, my favorite. Minimize. I think if there's one theme that stood out more than anything else through all these podcasts, it's that I've been speaking to a whole heap of minimalists. And the reason that I wanted to speak to so many minimalists is because I realized that so many of us have so much shit in our lives that we don't need that just make us feel really, really stressed. So before we go into this whole idea of minimalism, let me just say one thing. Minimalism is not living some stoic lifestyle where you get rid of everything and you sleep on like a wooden floor with like a straw pillow and you just try and do it tough. Minimalism is simply getting rid of the excess in your life so that you can focus on the essential. Do you know that the average American household has over 300,000 items in their house? Just think about that for a minute. That is a ridiculous amount of stuff. If you're anything like me, you probably still don't believe what I just said. It took me a couple of weeks worth of reading and research to actually believe it. It's true. When you start to minimize that stuff, you start to realize that there's a whole heap more space in your life for the things that you really value. Now, if you feel as though when you walk into a room and it's clean, it's like a whole breath of fresh air just comes over you, I would really highly recommend that you try minimizing the amount of stuff that you have. Now, you don't have to go hard. Here's a couple of options for you. Ryan Nicodemus touched on a really cool point. He says one great way to do it is to have a packing party. Pack away everything you own. Absolutely everything. This is what he did. And you're only allowed to take out what you need as you need it. He said in his experience, after 6 weeks of living like this, he realized that 80% of his belongings were still in the boxes. He says he wasn't missing anything. He wasn't craving anything. He just realized he had a whole heap of stuff in his life that he just did not need. He said there was a breath of fresh air that came over him when he realized that he created some room in his life for the really essential. If you want to do things a little bit more slower and gradually build up, the minimalists also have a great a minimalism game that lasts for a whole month. So really simple. The first day, you throw out one thing. Second day, 2 things. Third day, 3 things, and so on and so forth for the 30 or 31 days that there are in that month. Over a period of that month, if you can stick it out, you've got rid of over 500 things. The idea of minimizing is just to help challenge you on what things that you really need in your life. So if you're thinking you got a little bit more crap in your life than what you want, hey, practice it for a little while. You don't have to get rid of everything, just get rid of the shit. Number 8, and a massive thanks to Kate Flanders for this one. Record where you spend your money. I don't need to say too much more about this apart from taking note of where it is that you're actually spending money. Just makes you have to be a little bit accountable for where it is that those finances are going. I mean, it's so easy for money just to slip through our fingers without us really paying too much attention. I did this a few years ago. The amount of money that I was spending on coffee in 1 month is way too embarrassing to even admit on here, especially because I'd have a coffee each morning before I left the house. So write down where it is that you're spending your money. The cool thing here, it challenges you on whether or not you're using it wisely. Hey, if you get to the end of the month, maybe your answer is, yeah, I'm using it fine. Continue with what you're doing. But maybe you get to the end of the month and you realize, whoa, I'm throwing away a whole heap on stuff I don't really need. And you can just make a few little changes so that that money can stay with you or go towards things that you really need rather than just the excess. Number 9, we're getting close to the end now, guys. A few more to go. I hope you guys are taking notes. Number 9, nurture your health. I think it's crazy that so many of us completely forget about our health. Now, we do it for different reasons. Some of us do it because we want to work a little bit later, or we just didn't have time this weekend, or we just didn't really find the opportunity to be able to get it done. But without our health, every other part of our life suffers. I mean, whether it's a mental health or whether it's our physical health, we can never operate at our full capacity when they aren't flourishing. So on the side of physical health, I think there's some really simple things when it comes to diet and exercise that can help us really get some advancements in this area. Now, the first thing, looking at our diet, people get confused about what to do because there's so many different diets and there's so many different ways that people are shouting at us to get fit. How about this one? If the food's in a packet, you probably don't need it. I mean, how easy is it when we go into a supermarket just to be inundated with all this nutritional information on all the packets of all the cereals that are screaming for our attention? But the fact is, the healthiest foods don't need a shout about how healthy they are. You never see a piece of broccoli shouting, or never see a piece of broccoli wrapped up with all its benefits, because we just know it's from the earth, it's healthy, it's natural. If you're struggling with what to choose, try and choose food as close to its natural state as possible. Try and steer clear of things with more than like 4 ingredients in it. If you don't know what the ingredients in your food is, don't eat it. Just take a look at the packet if you are going to go for the packet food. If you can't pronounce it, don't eat it. It's probably a preservative. It's probably something used to extend its shelf life, which no natural food actually needs in it. Another thing, when it comes to exercise, it doesn't have to be intense. I mean, when it comes to losing weight and when it comes to good health, I feel like we've overcomplicated it to a massive extent. One of the coolest things about exercise is that all you need to do is go for a walk. It might be half an hour, it might be an hour, but when you start eating well and exercising regularly, weight falls off, your body starts to feel better, you start to feel a whole lot more alive. You can do yoga. There's a great app called Yoga Studio, which I recommend. You can join a gym class for really good value. There's so many good value options out there. The problem is not that we're not on the right gym program or we're not on the right diet. It's just that we're not doing it consistently enough. I mean, there was a period there where I was going through, I was doing a 20-minute gym workout each day. That was nothing, but I was doing it consistently. I think the problem isn't the gym workout, it's the consistency. So find something that's easy enough to keep you coming back for more each and every day, and combine that with a good diet, man, you're going to be fine. Number 10, discover enough. This is such a powerful point because I think our culture is one of just accumulating more and more and more with no real clarity on what it is that we're trying to achieve, whether it's status or whether it's money or whether it's some breakthrough in your career. We're all just long for something more. But as we walk down that path and we start to claim the titles that we had hoped to have for so long, we start to realize that the joy that we thought would come with them don't necessarily come with them. So we continually change our perspective. We continually change what it is that we're aiming for a little further down the road. It seems the closer we get to the horizon, the further back the horizon seems. So I think when we start out, one of the most important tools that these guys have allowed us to see is so important is just to discover what it is you're actually trying to achieve. Number 11. Add value to the lives of others. Now, this was such an eye-opener to me because I'm someone who's always looking to improve whatever it is that I'm doing. And every single person that I spoke to over the last few weeks has all come back to this major theme in their work. They all say that their number one priority is to add value to the lives of others. And I mean, when you look through their profiles, when you look through what it is they're actually doing, the only reason people want to have anything to do with these guys is because their message has touched a sweet spot in their lives. It's actually helped them change something, adjust something, see things from a new perspective. It's really added value to their lives. And I mean, the reason that I contacted these guys was because in some capacity, they've all made an impact on my life. And this has really stood out to me. I mean, if you want to make an impact, if you want to be successful, if you want to make a change in the lives of others, add value to their lives. I mean, we can get so caught up thinking about what we need to do better, how we need to improve, what it is that we need to say. But if the actual foundation of our work, if the actual priority of what it is that we're doing isn't about adding value to the lives of others, I feel like we need to change that before we step forward. These guys are living proof of that. I mean, the Minimalists started off with a few thousand readers and they've gradually picked up over time because the message has been spread from one person telling another person how much of an impact their work has had on their life. So you want to make an impact? Well, add value to the lives of other people. 12. Step into the unknown. This is so important and so underrated and so undervalued. I think the reason we've got to be comfortable to step into the unknown is because in the creative process, we never truly know exactly what it is the future holds. In fact, like all these people that I've interviewed over the last few weeks, each have said there's been twists and turns in what it is that they've done that at the time seemed like a real negative, but over time turned out to be a massive positive experience. So I think our control freak nature can sometimes stop us stepping out until everything is perfect. But the truth is that some of the mistakes and some of the challenges that we face along the way turn out to be one of the most powerful, one of the most inspiring, and one of the most beneficial experiences that we can all have on the journey that is we're taking. Number 13, establish routines. This was a massive standout for me over the last few weeks. Every person that I've spoken to pretty much, not whether it was right now or at some stage in their life, have all been big fans of establishing routines. Now, I think one thing that stood out to me about this was the routines allowed them to put what it is that they really believe in, the things that are really important to them, into a particular part of their day. It's not even necessarily about being disciplined, but it's just about establishing time for what it is that you want to invest in. I mean, the morning routines of Courtney Carver was a great example where she felt as though when she invested in herself to kickstart her day, the rest of the day she was just a nicer person to be around. So she would get up and she would start with meditation, she would start with some writing, she would have a coffee, she would do a gym workout. And she said that once she had that done, she felt a level of calm come over her that just made her so much easier to be around. I mean, Ryan Nicodemus had a similar program, Kate Flanders had a similar program. You don't have to make it like what somebody else's is, but I think the great thing about establishing a routine is just the fact that it allows you to allocate time to where it is that you really want to commit your energies. So spend some time thinking about what those things are and figure out the best ways that it is that you can implement those in your days. I think Colin Wright made a really good point. He says it doesn't have to be the same every day. He says it doesn't have to be a really black and white discipline. As long as you're investing your energy each and every day in what it is that you believe in, then you can go to bed feeling proud of the fact that you've invested in it. Second last one, and advice that I really need to give to myself right now. When you've been working for a long time, number 14, take a walk. Your mind gets so consumed by the work that you've been doing. You get so caught up seeing things from one perspective, from one angle. Stepping outside, out of the room that you've been contained in to do your work, and stepping into nature, seeing the birds, seeing the sky, feeling the wind on your face. It's not only incredibly refreshing, but it just helps you see things from a completely new point of view. In fact, a few weeks ago, I wrote an article after having a conversation with some of the guests who have spoken about the freedom that comes through just taking a walk each day. I talked about walking to a fresh perspective, and it's so incredibly true. If you feel as though your mind's become foggy and overwhelmed with the work that you've been doing, hey, change your state. Put your running shoes on, step out the front door and go for a walk. Maybe for half an hour, maybe for a couple of hours, but I can almost guarantee that when you come home, you will not only feel lighter in your mind and in your body, but you'll feel so much more inspired to get back to what it is that you were doing. And chances are the clarity that you feel in your mind will allow you to do it at a whole new level. And lucky last, now I wanted to change this last one up a little bit. This isn't advice or observations. This is purely tools that have really stood out to me from the conversations with all these people over the last few weeks. So I wanted to give you a couple of highlights and a few little cheeky ones that I haven't even mentioned on the podcast that you just have to go and read. So let me give you a few. This is one that I haven't mentioned on the podcast as far as I can remember, but you need to go and read it. It's a book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. He looks at a distraction-filled society with people continually jumping from one task to another and how it's so difficult for us to focus any energies on one particular thing. He walks through the benefits of being able to focus on one particular thing, and he also holds our hand as he guides us on how it is that we can actually get this done. A great documentary recommended by Ryan Nicodemus called The True Cost. This is a documentary by a guy called Andrew Morgan, straight out of the States, where he looks at fast fashion and the impact that it's having on our society, having on the world, not just our society, people all around the world. So highly recommend it. It's on Netflix. Kate Flanders and I spoke about Elizabeth Gilbert and her book, Big Magic. You want to hear more about the creative process and how to invest more into what it is that you believe in? Oh my gosh, please read this book. She really is my girlfriend. It is the best book going around. I've read it a few times now and I've got it on my Kindle. It's one I turn back to every now and then for a little bit of inspiration. I've completely forgot his name. What's his name? My best mate, Rob Bell. Be Here Now. Another great book on the creative process. Check it out. Also, just one for Powley, the great man who's quite regularly on this show. Ram Dass's podcast. And also Jordan Peterson's podcast. I'm going to put those together, put them in the show notes so you can go and access those. Guys, I hope I hope some of these have made an impact on where it is that you are right now. I'm sure they have, because they've made a massive impact on my life. Any feedback you want to give, make sure you get in touch. Don't forget to join my newsletter, tysonpopplestone.com/newsletter. Apart from that, I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go give my wife a kiss because she just came home. All right. Big love, everyone. Speak soon.